Well, hello everybody and welcome to Chef's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make an apple fudge cake. So this is going to be quite a thin cake with a soft and sort of fudgy centre to it. Similar, I think, to a Swedish kladdkaka cake, but that's chocolate and this isn't chocolate, this is apple. Should be very, very tasty. I saw the recipe on the Ankersrum website and I've adjusted it just a little bit, but I'm using that because I'm going to use my Ankersrum mixer. Though you could do this all by hand or you could do it with a hand mixer. It doesn't matter at all really. So it's quite straightforward, and I start off by preheating my oven to 190 degrees Celsius, 170 Celsius with a fan, 375 Fahrenheit, and I have greased and lined, or greased a 23 centimetre 9-inch cake tin, a spring form tin this one is, and I have lined the bottom with parchment paper. So that's ready to take the batter, and I'll go on to the ingredients. And for this I have 250 grams, which is 1 2/3 cups based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup of plain flour. I have 80 grams, 3/4 of a cup plus 2 teaspoons of ground almond. I have 6 grams, 1 tablespoon of ground cinnamon, 4 grams, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1.5 grams, 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I have 100 grams, half a cup of caster sugar, 50 grams, 1/4 cup of light brown sugar, 100 grams, 7 tablespoons of softened unsalted butter. Then I have 250 grams, 1 cup of apple puree. And I have made my apple puree. The Ankersrum recipe tells you how to make the apple puree, but you can use apple puree out of a jar if you want to. You could use unsweetened apple sauce, I'm sure, but I've made that, and that's a combination of Bramley apples and Braeburn apples basically. And then I also, that's 1 cup. Then I also have another 10 grams, which is about 2 teaspoons of softened unsalted butter, and 50 grams, half a cup of flaked almonds. So that's all the ingredients, and we need to then go on to make our cake batter. And the first thing for that is actually to put the almonds, the cinnamon, the salt and the baking powder into the flour, and then just stir those around to get those combined a little bit. Then we can set that aside until we need it. I mean, as you mix it in the mixer, it will mix together, but because we're not don't want to over mix the flour, I always find it better to mix the dry ingredients a little bit in advance to make sure that they get fairly evenly distributed throughout. And that's good enough, so I'll set that to one side and we'll go on to mix the wet ingredients. So I'm going to put my brown sugar and my caster sugar into the bowl of my mixer. I'm going to add in my 100 grams of butter. And I'm going to whisk those together until they combined and they're nice and fluffy, and that should take about a minute. So I've mixed that for about a minute, and I did scrape the bowl down. So I'm going to put in my apple puree, and then I'm going to mix that and get that combined as well. So that's mixed in quite nicely, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my dry ingredients in on a low speed, just a little bit at a time until it's all combined without over mixing. And that's just about mixed in, so I'm actually going to take the paddles, the whisks off, and then I'll just give it a stir around with a spatula to make sure it's evenly distributed. That's good like that. So then what I need to do is take about 50 grams of that, and I'll tell you how much that is as I weigh it out, and keep it separate. So I've taken out 50 grams, which is a good 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of the batter. I'll just set that to one side for a moment, and then I'm going to scrape the remaining batter into my prepared tin, and then I'll level it off. So with the batter in the tin, I'm going to level that over the base. And that's fairly level. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 50 grams of my batter, mix it with my butter and with my almonds. I put the almonds in as well, and then I'm going to put this on the top. And that's mixed well enough. So I'm going to just drop little pieces over it, and then I'll spread it over. And I'm just going to spread it over. And I think that's reasonably well spread. So I'm going to put that into the oven, and I'm going to bake it for about 25 minutes until it cooks through. I test it with a skewer, and it may be moist, but it should not be sort of have the dough clinging to it. But remember, this is going to be a soft and fudgy cake, so we can't expect the skewer to be entirely clean. So after 25 minutes I take it out of the oven and I leave it in the pan to cool down for a few minutes before I take it out of the pan and transfer it to a wire rack to cool completely. Then I'll come back and show you the results. I baked the apple fudge cake for 25 minutes, then I tested it with a skewer which came out completely clean. So I actually think I could have baked it for probably slightly less time than was recommended in the recipe. But I allowed it to cool down in the tin for about 10 minutes. Then I took it out of the tin and put it onto a wire rack, and it's just about cooled down now. So I'll show you what it looks like. So this is how it's baked up. It's nice and dense, I have to say, and fudgy, and I think it's baked through just as it should have done. So I'll have a taste of this piece that I've cut off. It is soft and fudgy. It has the cinnamon and it has a wonderful tang that comes from those apples, and I used mainly Bramley apples, which are a cooking apple, so they're quite tart. Gives it a lovely tang. I think perhaps slightly less cinnamon would suit my particular taste better, so if I was to do this again I may use just 2 teaspoons of cinnamon rather than a tablespoon, but that's what the recipe prescribes, so that's what I did. So very, very good. Ideal as a dessert. I don't think I would want to eat it just by itself. I would want to eat it with some cream or some ice cream, just to give it a little bit of extra, so to speak. So that's going to be it for this recipe. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video, and I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.